The call came at 11:43 p.m. on a Thursday night, jolting me awake from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. I'd been pulling 18-hour days finalizing the acquisition of 3 more medical facilities for my healthcare investment company, Meridian Health Systems. "Emma, thank God you answered." Dad's voice was tight with stress and exhaustion. "We need to talk. It's about Kevin." I sat up in bed, instantly alert. Kevin was my younger brother, 28 to my 31, and despite our complicated family dynamics, I loved him deeply. "What happened? Is he okay?" "He's alive, but Emma, he needs surgery. Major surgery. They found a tumor in his spine. Without the operation he could be paralyzed." My blood ran cold. "Where is he?" "Sacred Heart Medical Center. They're saying the surgery will cost $400,000, and our insurance will only cover about 60%. We need $160,000 out of pocket." I was already reaching for my laptop, pulling up the Sacred Heart Medical Center file. It was one of the 12 hospitals I'd acquired over the past 4 years through Meridian Health Systems, my medical investment portfolio worth approximately $2.3 billion. "Dad, I'll help with whatever Kevin needs." "Emma, we need you to sell your apartment. I know it's a lot to ask, but family comes first. Kevin's life is more important than your living situation." I looked around my penthouse apartment in downtown Portland, 4,500 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River, custom Italian furniture, a private elevator. The apartment I'd bought for $3.2 million 2 years ago when Meridian's profits had exceeded all projections. The apartment my family assumed was a financial stretch for their struggling nonprofit worker daughter. "Of course, Dad. Whatever Kevin needs." "Really?" The relief in his voice was palpable. "Emma, I know this is huge. I know you probably stretched to afford that place, but we're desperate. Your mother's been crying for hours. We don't know what else to do. Don't worry about it. I'll handle everything. You're amazing, sweetheart. Kevin's so lucky to have a sister who'd sacrifice her home for his health. I'll call the hospital tomorrow and let them know we're working on the payment." After Dad hung up, I immediately called Dr. Patricia Williams, the Chief Medical Officer at Sacred Heart Medical Center. "Ms. Thompson? This is very late for you to be calling. Patricia, I need you to pull the file on Kevin Thompson. He's scheduled for spinal surgery." "One moment. Yes, here it is. Spinal tumor removal. Dr. Rodriguez is the lead surgeon. Estimated cost $400,000. Is there a problem?" "I want all charges for Kevin Thompson's treatment to be written off completely. Full charity care designation." "That's very generous, Miss Thompson. May I ask the reason?" "He's my brother." There was a pause. "Your brother? But the patient information doesn't list you as family." "Update his file." "And Patricia? I want Dr. Rodriguez personally overseeing every aspect of his care. The best of everything." "Of course, Ms. Thompson. Should I have billing contact the family about the charity care status?" "Not yet. Let me handle that conversation personally." I spent the next hour reviewing Kevin's medical file, consulting with Dr. Rodriguez about the surgical plan, and ensuring that my brother would receive the absolute best care available. Sacred Heart was one of the premier medical facilities on the West Coast, and Kevin would have access to treatments and specialists that most patients could only dream of. What my family didn't know was that their struggling daughter, who worked for a small nonprofit, had spent the past 6 years quietly building one of the largest healthcare investment portfolios in the Pacific Northwest. It had started when I was 25, working as a program coordinator for a medical charity. I'd seen firsthand how the healthcare system failed patients who couldn't afford quality care. Instead of just complaining about the problem, I decided to become part of the solution. I'd used my MBA in healthcare administration and my savings to make my first investment, a struggling urgent care center in a low-income neighborhood. Within 2 years I'd turned it around, improved patient outcomes, and generated enough profit to acquire 2 more facilities. By 31, Meridian Health Systems owned or had controlling stakes in 12 hospitals, 37 urgent care centers, and the largest medical equipment leasing company on the West Coast. We employed over 8,000 people and generated annual revenues of approximately $1.8 billion. But to my family, I was still just Emma, the idealistic nonprofit worker who barely scraped by financially while trying to save the world. The next morning, I arrived at Sacred Heart at 7 a.m. to personally oversee Kevin's pre-surgical preparation. I found him in room 314, looking pale and frightened, with Mom and Dad sitting beside his bed. Emma. Kevin's face lit up when he saw me. Dad told me what you're doing. I can't believe you're selling your apartment for me. Don't worry about it, I said, squeezing his hand. Focus on getting better. But you're home, Em. You love that place. I looked at my parents, Mom red-eyed from crying, Dad trying to maintain composure while clearly terrified of losing his son. They had no idea that their daughter owned the hospital where this conversation was taking place. Kevin, I want you to meet Dr. Rodriguez. He's going to be performing your surgery. Dr. Rodriguez entered the room with the professional calm of someone who'd performed thousands of successful operations. Mr. Thompson, I wanted to personally assure you that you're going to receive the absolute best care possible. This is a routine procedure for me and I'm confident about your full recovery. Thank you, doctor. My family is. We're doing everything we can to manage the costs. Actually, Dr. Rodriguez glanced at me, there's been a development with your billing. The hospital's financial services department needs to speak with your family. Right on cue, Patricia Williams appeared in the doorway. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson? I'm Dr. Williams, Chief Medical Officer. I have some news about your son's medical expenses. Dad stood up immediately. We're working on the payment. Our daughter is selling her apartment to help us cover the costs. That won't be necessary. Sacred Heart has decided to provide full charity care for Kevin's treatment. All costs will be covered completely. The room went silent. I don't understand, Mom said slowly. Charity care? But we don't qualify. We're not indigent. Sometimes, Patricia said carefully, the hospital receives special designations for certain patients. Kevin's case has been flagged for full coverage. Dad looked confused. Flagged by whom? By the hospital's primary stakeholder, Patricia replied. Someone who has a personal interest in ensuring Kevin receives the best possible care. Who? We don't know anyone with that kind of influence. Patricia looked at me and I nodded slightly. The hospital is owned by Meridian Health Systems. And Kevin's sister Emma is the founder and CEO of Meridian Health Systems. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the heart monitor beeping in the next room. That's not possible, Dad said finally. Emma works for a nonprofit. She makes maybe $40,000 a year. Dad, I said gently, I haven't worked for a nonprofit in 6 years. I volunteer on 3 nonprofit boards, but my full-time job is running Meridian Health Systems. Mom stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. But you always seemed so modest about money. I am modest about money. That doesn't mean I don't have it. How much money are we talking about? Kevin asked weakly. I pulled out my phone and showed them the Meridian Health Systems website, professional photos of our facilities, press coverage of major acquisitions, my bio as founder and CEO. Meridian Health Systems currently owns 12 hospitals and 37 urgent care centers across 3 states. We generate approximately $1.8 billion in annual revenue. Dad was scrolling through the website, his expression changing from confusion to disbelief to something approaching awe. This says you personally are worth. This says your net worth is estimated at $400 million. That's probably conservative. It doesn't include my private equity investments or real estate holdings. But Emma, Mom said, tears starting again, why didn't you tell us? Why let us worry about money when you could solve all our problems? Because you never asked about my actual work, Mom. Every time I tried to share my business achievements, the conversation got redirected to when I was going to settle down, get married, give you grandchildren. We were just concerned about your future. My future was fine. Better than fine. While you were worrying about my life choices, I was building one of the most successful healthcare investment companies in the country. Dr. Rodriguez cleared his throat. I should mention that Kevin will be receiving some additional benefits from this arrangement. Our VIP medical suite, private nursing staff, and access to experimental treatments that aren't typically covered by insurance. VIP suite? Kevin looked overwhelmed. The penthouse level, I said. Private room, concierge service, gourmet meals. You'll recover in style. Emma, I don't understand any of this. You're really worth $400 million. Closer to $500 million as of last quarter's valuation. But Kevin, that's not what matters. What matters is that you're going to be okay. But your apartment. I'm not selling my apartment. I bought it with cash 2 years ago. It's maybe 0.1% of my total net worth. Dad looked like he was having trouble processing everything. You paid cash for a $3.2 million penthouse. Dad, last month I bought a medical equipment company for $180 million. The apartment was a minor purchase. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked again. Because every time I mentioned business success, you found ways to minimize it or change the subject. Remember last Christmas when I tried to tell you about acquiring Summit Medical Group? Mom looked embarrassed. You said something about buying a medical facility. A $90 million acquisition that expanded our network into Washington state. But you interrupted to ask if I'd met any nice doctors I might want to date. We were just trying to show interest in your personal life. My personal life was fine. My professional life was extraordinary. But you never asked about the professional side because you'd already decided it wasn't as important as settling down. Kevin's surgery was scheduled for 2 p.m. As they wheeled him into the operating room, he squeezed my hand. When I wake up, will you tell me about your company? Really tell me? I want to understand what you've built. I'd love that, Kevin. The surgery took 4 hours. Dr. Rodriguez found me in the VIP family waiting area afterward. Perfect success, he said with a smile. Complete tumor removal, no complications. Kevin should have full mobility and no lasting effects. Thank you, doctor. Miss Thompson, can I ask you something? In all my years practicing medicine, I've never seen someone build a healthcare empire quite like yours. What drives you? I looked around the waiting area, at the comfortable furniture, the coffee service, the peaceful environment designed to help families through medical crises. I saw how the healthcare system failed people who couldn't afford quality care. I decided to build something better, facilities that provide excellent care while remaining financially sustainable. And the business success? The business success allows us to reinvest in better equipment, higher staff salaries, and charity care for patients who need it. Profit isn't the goal, it's the tool that lets us achieve the real goal. When Kevin woke up in his VIP suite 6 hours later, the first thing he saw was his family gathered around his bed. But now they were looking at me with something I'd never seen before, not just love, but respect and genuine curiosity about my achievements. How are you feeling? I asked. Good, really good. Will you tell me about your hospitals now? For the next hour, I shared stories about the facilities I'd acquired and improved, the thousands of employees whose jobs I'd saved or created, the patients who'd received life-saving care because of the systems I'd built. You've saved lives, Kevin said softly. Thousands of them. We have good doctors and nurses. I just make sure they have the resources they need to do their best work. Dad cleared his throat. Emma, I owe you an apology. A huge one. For what specifically? For assuming you were struggling financially just because you don't flaunt your wealth. For trying to solve your problems instead of asking about your achievements. For 31 years of underestimating my own daughter. And for not realizing, Mom added, that our little girl had become one of the most successful businesswomen in the country while we worried about whether she'd ever find a husband. I felt tears in my eyes for the first time in years. I didn't build this for recognition from you, but it means everything that you're finally interested in understanding it. Can you teach us? Kevin asked. About healthcare, about business, about what you do every day? I'd love to. 3 months later, Kevin had made a complete recovery and was back to his job as a physical therapist. But more importantly, our family had transformed into something I'd never experienced before. People who were genuinely interested in each other's real lives and achievements. Kevin started volunteering at one of our charity clinics. Mom joined the board of the Meridian Foundation, our nonprofit arm that provided free healthcare to underserved communities. Dad, an accountant, began helping with financial consulting for small medical practices we were considering acquiring. The family that had been so focused on traditional markers of success, marriage, children, conventional careers, had learned to appreciate and support the unconventional path that had led to the most meaningful success of all. Building something that made the world better while generating the resources to keep improving it. The daughter they'd thought needed to sell her apartment to help with medical bills had instead used her healthcare empire to ensure her brother received world-class care at no cost, while simultaneously providing jobs and healthcare access to thousands of other families. But the most valuable thing I'd built wasn't measured in dollars. It was the family relationship based on truth instead of assumptions, where my achievements were celebrated rather than minimized, and where love was expressed through genuine interest rather than misguided concern. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well. But sometimes, if you're very fortunate, living well becomes the foundation for healing relationships and showing others that success comes in many forms, and that assumptions about achievement can blind us to the extraordinary accomplishments happening right in front of us. As I fell asleep that night in my penthouse apartment, the one I hadn't needed to sell after all, I realized that the greatest return on my investment hadn't been financial. It had been the moment when my family finally saw me for who I really was, not the struggling daughter they'd worried about, but the successful woman who had turned her compassion into a business empire that changed lives every single day.
My name is Rachel Chen, and at 35, I'm the proud owner of a thriving bakery chain. But last year, my mother-in-law, Linda, made it her mission to turn my success into a battleground. I'll never forget the day she strolled into my flagship store, her smirk as sharp as a knife. "Your croissants are stale, dear," she declared, her voice ringing out across the crowded cafe. "No wonder your sales are dropping." I clenched my jaw to keep the tears at bay. Linda had already cost me a crucial business deal earlier that week, yet here she was again, sowing chaos. The irony? Just hours before, she'd asked me to invest my savings in her retirement fund. But this wasn't the start of Linda's campaign against me. To understand how it all unraveled, you'd have to go back 5 years to when sweet success was just a dream. A small corner bakery that became the center of my world. Baking had always been my solace, my escape after losing both my parents. When I met Michael, Linda's son, he became my biggest cheerleader. "You're incredible, Rach," he'd say, biting into whatever new creation I'd whipped up. "The world needs this." With his encouragement and every penny of my savings, I opened my first shop in downtown Seattle. Those early days were grueling. I'd wake at 3 a.m. to bake, run the counter, and close up long after sunset. Slowly, the hard work paid off. My matcha cream puffs and honey lavender croissants turned heads, and soon sweet success was the talk of the town. That's when Linda began to take notice. "Rachel, darling," she said at Sunday dinner one evening, her tone as sugary as my frosting. "I had no idea your little hobby could actually make money." Her words stung, but I smiled politely. After all, she was family. Years later, when I was ready to expand, Linda's interest grew sharper. A prime spot at Pike Place Market became available, and with a newly approved loan, I was ready to take the leap. The night I shared the news, Linda's eyes glinted with an intensity I should have heeded. "Oh, sweetie," she said, swirling her wine. "Expanding too quickly is risky. Remember Jenny's cupcakes? They crashed and burned. But don't worry, I have years of business experience. I'd be happy to guide you." I declined, thanking her but making it clear I had things under control. The next morning, my contractor called in a frenzy. Multiple code violations had been reported at the new location. The delays in repairs cost me 3 months and nearly $100,000. Later, I found out Linda was close friends with the inspector's wife. Still, I pressed on, and sweet success flourished. Our new Pike Place location was a hit, leading to franchise opportunities and a feature in Northwest Business Monthly. But Linda wasn't celebrating my achievements. Instead, she made her move during a family dinner. "Rachel, dear," she began with practiced sweetness, "I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, with my son's help, of course. His connections really opened doors for you, didn't they?" I nearly choked on my wine. "Actually, Linda, Michael and I have always kept our careers separate. He's incredibly supportive, but sweet success is my business." Her smile turned brittle. "Oh, so all those corporate orders from Michael's clients were just a coincidence." Before I could respond, she pivoted. "Well, since you're doing so well, we should discuss family obligations. Your father-in-law and I aren't getting any younger, and our retirement portfolio took a hit." She trailed off, waiting for me to connect the dots. When I didn't, she leaned in. "We'll need about $500,000 to maintain our lifestyle." The room fell silent. My hands trembled as I placed my fork down. "Linda," I said carefully, Sweet Success is my company, built with my own savings and hard work. I'm reinvesting my profits into expansion, not personal loans. Her face darkened. So this is how you repay family loyalty. That night, I realized Linda didn't see me as an entrepreneur or even as her son's wife. To her, I was a pawn in her games, and she was willing to destroy everything I built to get what she wanted. The next morning, I logged into my company's social media accounts and froze. Overnight, dozens of one-star reviews had been posted, accusing us of stale pastries and food poisoning. Our morning rush was half its usual crowd, whispers of the reviews spreading like wildfire. That's when Linda walked in, her smile cold as steel. "Your croissants are stale, dear," she said again, loud enough for everyone to hear. As I watched a potential corporate client slip out the door, I realized Linda wasn't just meddling, she was waging war. But Sweet Success wasn't just a business. It was my dream, my resilience, and my life's work. And I wasn't about to let Linda destroy it. The following weeks were a whirlwind of chaos, each morning unveiling a new crisis that bore Linda's invisible fingerprints. Wholesale orders were inexplicably canceled. Health inspectors began showing up unannounced during our busiest hours, spurred by anonymous complaints. Even our suppliers, long reliable, suddenly doubled their prices, citing vague market fluctuations. I confided in Michael, hoping he'd see what was happening, but he was caught between loyalty to his mother and support for me. "Babe, are you sure Mom's behind this?" he asked hesitantly one evening, glancing at the grim sales reports on my laptop. "Maybe it's just bad luck." I slammed the lid shut, the frustration bubbling over. Bad luck doesn't send fake food poisoning reports to the health department. I shot back, then softened my tone. "I'm sorry, I'm watching everything I've worked for unravel, and your mother is enjoying every second of it." He sighed, torn but silent. That Sunday, Linda dealt her next blow. During our customary family dinner, she casually voiced her concerns about my mental state, ensuring everyone heard. "I'm worried about Rachel," she sighed dramatically, slicing into her roast beef with a calculated pause. "The stress of running a failing business can make people unstable. Maybe it's time to consider selling before things get worse." I gripped my water glass, barely containing my anger. "My business isn't failing, Linda. At least not without a little help." "See what I mean?" Linda turned to Michael, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Paranoid accusations. Honey, maybe Rachel should see someone. I know an excellent therapist." That night, sleep eluded me. Restless, I reviewed our security camera footage from the bakery. A strange movement caught my eye. A familiar figure slipping into the kitchen after hours. Zooming in, my stomach churned. It was Linda, using the spare key Michael had for emergencies. The next morning, I checked our storage room and confirmed my worst fears. The premium Madagascar vanilla we use for our signature pastries had been replaced with cheap imitation extract. The high-end chocolate was swapped for low-grade cooking chocolate. Small, insidious changes that would erode our quality and reputation over time. I confronted Linda that evening in her perfectly curated living room. Armed with security footage and receipts, I laid out the evidence. She sat unfazed, sipping tea with a smug smile. "Really, Rachel? Security footage? How desperate." She placed her cup down gracefully. "There's still time to fix this. My retirement fund offer stands." I shook my head, the realization hitting me. "This isn't about money anymore, is it? You just can't stand that I succeeded without you." Linda's smile vanished, replaced by a cold glare. "You married into this family, dear. Everything you have, you owe to us. I'm giving you a choice. Fund our retirement or watch your little bakery empire crumble." I stood, my hands trembling with anger. "No, Linda. I'm giving you a choice. Stop sabotaging my business, or I'll show Michael and everyone else exactly who you are." She laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. "Who do you think I'll believe? The respected mother who's only looking out for her son? Or the unstable entrepreneur spiraling into a breakdown?" As I left her house, my phone buzzed. It was a notification. Our largest corporate client, Michael's law firm, had just canceled all standing orders. The message was loud and clear. Linda wasn't done. But in her arrogance, she'd overlooked something crucial. There was a paper trail. The fake reviews? All traced back to her IP address. The supplier price hike? The owner was one of her golf buddies. And the security footage? That was just the start. I stayed up all night piecing it all together. Every coincidence, every sabotage attempt, every manipulative dig. 5 years of Linda's games laid bare in a meticulous dossier. The next morning would change everything. Linda thought she was dismantling my business piece by piece, but in truth, she handed me the tools to expose her. Not just to Michael, but to everyone who believed in her facade. As I finalized my plans, my phone lit up with a text from Linda. "Last chance, dear. The retirement fund or your business. Choose wisely." I smiled, thinking of the meeting I'd scheduled with Michael and his father later that morning. Linda had no idea what was coming. Morning arrived, and I walked into Michael's law firm, clutching my evidence folder like a lifeline. His father, Richard, was already there, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. "Rachel, what's this emergency meeting about?" Before I could answer, Linda swept into the room, her sharp heels clicking on the polished floor. "I got your text, Richard. What's she doing here?" She froze when she saw the folder in my hands, her confidence faltering for the first time. "Please have a seat," I said, keeping my voice steady as I set up my laptop. "There's something everyone here needs to see." For the next 30 minutes, I presented my case. The security footage of Linda tampering with ingredients, screenshots of fake reviews linked to her IP address, emails from suppliers confirming her interference, bank records showing suspicious transfers made just before every health inspection. Michael's face darkened with each revelation. "Mom, how could you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Linda's laugh was brittle, her composure unraveling. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. She's making all this up because she can't handle running a business. Richard, surely you don't believe." "The evidence speaks for itself," I interrupted, clicking to the next slide. "And I've invited someone to join us." The door opened and Detective Sarah Morris stepped inside, her badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Linda, breaking and entering, business sabotage, and attempted extortion are serious charges. I suggest you listen carefully to what Rachel has to say." Linda's face drained of color. "You wouldn't dare. I'm family." Michael's voice was steady, but the disappointment was palpable. "Family doesn't destroy family, Mom." "Dad, show her the statement." Richard pulled out a printed document, his expression grave. "Linda, I checked our accounts after Rachel came to me yesterday. We have more than enough for retirement. Care to explain why you've been moving money to a private account?" Linda's mask crumbled completely as the truth spilled out. She'd been embezzling from their retirement fund for years to cover gambling debts. Forcing me to contribute was her desperate attempt to plug the holes before Richard noticed. "I want to press charges," I said, my voice firm as I looked directly at Linda. "But I'll drop them on 2 conditions. First, you publicly clear Sweet Success's name and reputation. Second, you step away from the family business and get professional help for your gambling." Linda glanced around the room, searching for support, but found none. Defeated, she nodded. "Fine," she whispered. The following week, Linda issued a public apology that went viral. "Due to personal challenges, I spread false claims about Sweet Success Bakery. These statements were entirely fabricated by me. Sweet Success upholds the highest standards of quality, and I deeply regret my actions." The apology was enough to restore faith in the business. Customers flooded back, drawn by both the story of redemption and our forgiveness special. All pastries half price for a week. Lines wrapped around the block, and Sweet Success emerged stronger than ever. Michael and I moved forward, setting clear boundaries with Linda. She entered treatment for her gambling addiction, and Richard became one of my most vocal supporters. A year later, Sweet Success expanded to 10 thriving locations. When Northwest Business Monthly featured us again, this time highlighting resilience in family businesses, Linda saw the article during a therapy session. "You know," she told her counselor, "I tried to tear Rachel down because I couldn't handle her success. Instead, I only proved how much she deserved it." Today, I write this from our new flagship store, watching happy customers enjoy our signature croissants. Fresh, flaky, and certainly not stale. Every challenge made us stronger, and Linda's journey toward redemption reminds me of something important. Success isn't just about building a business. It's about standing your ground when someone tries to tear you down. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't revenge. It's watching someone who once sought your downfall confront their demons and find a path to change. Would you have pressed charges in my situation? Or was offering Linda a chance at redemption the right call? Share your thoughts below. My name is Catherine Walsh, and if you told me a year ago that I'd be homeless at 35, I would have laughed in disbelief. But here I am. It all started with a promise, a hollow one from my mother-in-law, Grace. She begged me to sell my house to save my sister-in-law, Amanda, from financial ruin, assuring me we'd live together as one big happy family. 2 weeks later, I found my belongings stuffed into trash bags on her front porch. Looking back, the warning signs were glaring, but I ignored them. It began 3 months ago at one of Grace's infamous Sunday dinners. Amanda sat at the table, eyes puffy and red, while Grace loomed over her like a general rallying her troops. "It's just been so hard since Tom left," Amanda wailed, dabbing her face theatrically with a monogrammed napkin. "The gambling debts. I can't handle it anymore." Her sobs tugged at my sympathy, even though they felt just a touch too polished, like a scene from a soap opera. Amanda's husband had walked out 6 months ago, leaving her saddled with massive, secret debts. The drama of it all was vintage Amanda. "The lawyers say bankruptcy is my only option," she continued, her voice trembling. "I'll lose everything, the house, the car, even Mom's antique collection." Grace's grip on Amanda's shoulder tightened as she turned her hawk-like gaze to me. "We can't let that happen, can we, Catherine? Family helps family." I hesitated, offering a noncommittal nod, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Grace had that gleam in her eye, the same one she'd worn when she convinced my husband, Mark, to loan Amanda $20,000 from our wedding fund. We never saw a dime of it back. "You know," Grace said, her voice syrupy with false sweetness, "Catherine, your house is so big for just you and Mark. Why not sell it? The market's fantastic right now." I nearly choked on my wine. "Sell our house? But think about it." Grace cut me off smoothly. "You could help Amanda wipe the slate clean. Everyone could live here together, one big happy family. Imagine the savings on utilities and upkeep." Mark shifted uneasily beside me. "Mom, that's a huge decision. We need to." "Of course, darling," Grace cooed, but her tone dripped with urgency. "It's just that Amanda's bankruptcy hearing is in 2 weeks. Time is of the essence." Over the following days, Grace bombarded us with calls, oscillating between guilt-tripping and thinly veiled accusations of selfishness. "I just don't understand how you could let your own family suffer," she'd say, her disappointment unmistakable. Mark, ever the peacekeeper, tried to stay neutral, but Grace was relentless. Eventually, under the crushing weight of guilt and obligation, we caved. We listed my dream home, the one I'd worked so hard to buy, and it sold almost instantly. The day we handed Amanda the check for $90,000, Grace was practically glowing. "This is what family does," she declared, pulling Amanda into a hug that excluded me entirely. We moved into Grace's modest home, cramming our lives into her guest room. I tried to stay optimistic. "This is temporary," I told Mark, more to convince myself. "We'll rebuild." But the cracks in Grace's big happy family fantasy started showing almost immediately. Amanda's gratitude seemed superficial, and I often caught her exchanging whispers with Grace. Bit by bit, our belongings migrated from the guest room to the garage, one box at a time. I brushed it off, desperate to keep the peace. Until the day it all came crashing down. On a rainy Tuesday morning, I opened the front door to find my life stuffed into garbage bags and my place in the family erased. That rainy Tuesday morning, I returned from a grueling hospital shift to find my life in ruins. Every single one of our belongings sat in garbage bags on Grace's front porch, soaking in the cold drizzle. A bright yellow note fluttered on the door, its cheerful color mocking the words scrawled in bold, unapologetic handwriting. "Found a better use for the guest room. Grace." My hands trembled as I stared at the mess. I fumbled for my phone, my voice shaking as I called Mark. "They've thrown us out," I managed, tears blurring my vision. "All our things air." "That's impossible," Mark interrupted. Mom wolded. His words faltered, replaced by muffled voices in the background. Then I heard Grace's unmistakable tone, sharp and unyielding. "Tell your wife not to make a scene," she said, her voice cutting like a blade. "Amanda needs the guest room for her home office now that she's starting her business." I froze. "Her what?" "Amanda's new business," Grace repeated, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. As if summoned by my disbelief, Amanda's Mercedes glided into the driveway, a sleek, brand new model that gleamed even in the gray light. Gone were the traces of financial ruin she paraded weeks ago. She stepped out in designer clothes, her hair and makeup perfect, a stark contrast to the tearful, bedraggled woman who'd begged for our help. "Oh," she said lightly, spotting me on the porch. "You're still here." Her tone was casual, as though we were old acquaintances running into each other by chance. She glanced at my rain-soaked belongings and winced. "Didn't you see the note? Mom and I decided it'd be best if you and Mark lived separately for a while. You know, so he can focus on family priorities." "Family priorities?" I echoed, my voice hollow. "We sold our house to help you." She laughed then, sharp and cruel, a sound that sliced through the air like a whip. "And I'm so grateful," she said, her smile all teeth. "That money was exactly what I needed to start my luxury spa business. Mom's been helping me plan it for months. She said you'd never agree if you knew the truth, so—" She gave a little shrug, as if the betrayal were a minor inconvenience. "We had to get creative." I stood there stunned as she sidestepped my belongings like they were garbage littering her path. "By the way," she added, pausing at the door, "Mark's staying here. Mom convinced him it's best for everyone. You understand, right?" Through the window, I could see Grace watching us, her arms crossed, a smug smile tugging at her lips. She'd orchestrated everything, the sale of our house, our move into her home, and now this final, calculated blow. The worst part, when I called Mark again, his phone went straight to voicemail. An hour later, a single text buzzed on my screen. "Mom's right. I need time to think. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stood in the rain, staring at the words until they blurred. My life, my home, my marriage had dissolved in the span of a morning. But as I began loading my drenched belongings into my car, another realization struck me. This wasn't just about money. This was about power and control. A perfectly executed plan to strip me of everything I held dear. But what they hadn't counted on was this. I wasn't powerless. They might have blindsided me, but they'd made one fatal mistake. I had evidence, every text, every email, every lie Grace and Amanda had spun to manipulate us. They thought they'd won, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. What Grace and Amanda didn't realize was that I had a habit of documenting everything. Years as a nurse had taught me the value of meticulous records. Every text, every email, every family meeting filled with thinly veiled manipulation. I had it all saved, including Amanda's drunken confession at last week's dinner about how she and Grace had been planning their so-called investment opportunity for months. My first stop was Sarah's law office. Sarah had been my best friend since college and was now one of the toughest attorneys in town. Sitting in her sleek conference room, still in my damp scrubs, I spread out printed emails, texts, and voice recordings across the table. As Sarah skimmed through the evidence, her eyebrows climbed higher with each page. "This," she said, pointing to a particularly damning email where Grace laid out their scheme, "is textbook fraud. And here, Amanda outright admits the bankruptcy was exaggerated to pressure you into selling." "Can we prove it?" I asked, my voice wavering as I wrung my hands. Sarah smiled, a sharp, predatory grin that I'd seen her flash before big cases. "Oh, we can do better than prove it. Grace's biggest mistake. She put everything in writing." The next morning, Grace's carefully curated world began to unravel. First came the legal notice of fraud charges. Then the police showed up to investigate misappropriation of funds. But the real bombshell came when the local news picked up the story. Overnight, Grace went from a respected socialite to a pariah. "You can't prove anything," Grace sputtered at reporters camped outside her country club, her usual composure cracking. But her defiance crumbled when they played Amanda's recorded confession, broadcasted for everyone to hear. 3 days later, Mark finally called. His voice was shaky, breaking under the weight of guilt. "Kath, I had no idea," he said. "Mom swore she was just helping Amanda get back on her feet. I never thought—" "Save it," I interrupted, my voice cold. "You chose them over me, over us." The court case was swift and devastating, for them. My documentation, coupled with Amanda's loose lips, left no room for doubt. The judge ordered Grace and Amanda to repay the full amount, plus damages. Amanda's spa, built with my stolen money, was seized and sold. Grace's reputation in her precious social circle was destroyed, replaced with whispers of scandal and betrayal. But the fallout didn't stop there. As news spread, other victims of Grace's schemes began to come forward. Amanda's ex-husband. He hadn't abandoned her. Grace had driven him off with similar tactics. 3 other daughters-in-law shared stories of manipulation and financial abuse that mirrored mine. Grace's web of deceit unraveled faster than anyone could have imagined. Today, I'm thriving. I live in a beautiful new condo, paid for with the settlement money. Mark still calls occasionally, pleading for a second chance, but some betrayals cut too deep to forgive. Yesterday, as I drove past Grace's house, I couldn't help but smile at the large for sale sign staked in the front yard. Karma, as it turns out, has a perfect sense of irony. Losing everything taught me more than I ever thought possible. It showed me my strength and resilience. It proved that the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's rising higher than they ever thought you could. To Grace, the mother-in-law who thought she could break me, thank you. You made me stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. Because I'm not just a survivor, I'm a warrior. And warriors don't just survive, they conquer. Hey everyone, I'm Jennifer Wu. I thought I'd inherited a legacy, 3 generations of family wealth, after my husband's tragic accident. But his mother and sister had different plans, armed with fake evidence and a sinister agenda. The day everything unraveled started just like any other. I was at my dental practice, focused on patient files, when my receptionist hurried in. Dr. Wu, your mother-in-law is here. She seems upset. Before I could respond, Eleanor Chen stormed through the door, clutching her designer handbag like it was a weapon. How dare you? She spat, tossing a manila envelope onto my desk. After everything we've done for you. Her hand, usually steady and composed, trembled as she pointed an accusing finger at me. Behind her, Melissa, my sister-in-law, leaned casually in the doorway, her usual smug grin firmly in place. I opened the envelope, my stomach twisting as staged photos spilled out. They depicted me with a man I didn't even recognize, entering a hotel, having dinner, holding hands. Each photo was meticulously crafted, complete with forged timestamps that painted a damning timeline, supposedly stretching back months before Michael's accident. These are fake, I said firmly, my voice steady despite the storm churning inside me. I don't even know this man. Melissa took a step forward, feigning concern. Oh, Jennifer. We didn't want to believe it either, but then we found these. She produced more papers, bank statements showing transfers I never authorized. Secret accounts, hidden funds. While my brother was dying, you were plotting your escape with your lover, weren't you? My mind raced back to that fateful night 6 months ago. Michael and I had been driving home from his parents' estate after dinner. He was animated, telling me about his plans to modernize Chen Investments once he took over. Dad's retiring next month, he had said, his eyes bright with excitement. The company will be ours, Jen. Everything we've dreamed of. Then, out of nowhere, the truck ran the red light. I survived. Michael didn't. You know this is all a lie, I said, rising to my feet. Michael and I were happy. We were building a future together. Eleanor's expression turned ice cold. Were you? Then explain this. She thrust her phone at me, playing a video. It showed me arguing with Michael in his office. My voice rang out clearly. I can't take this anymore. I wish I'd never married into this family. I remembered that moment vividly. It wasn't real. It was a theater rehearsal. Melissa had been directing one of her amateur plays, and Michael had helped me rehearse my lines. We'd been laughing between takes, but in this doctored version, the laughter was gone and only the tension remained. That's from a rehearsal, I protested. Melissa, you were there. You were directing. But Melissa merely shook her head, feigning pity. You're grasping at straws, Jennifer. We have proof, photos, bank records, even your so-called escape plans. Lying won't help you now. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. Did you really think we'd let our family's legacy fall into the hands of a gold digger? That we'd stand by while you inherited everything? And then it hit me. This wasn't just an attack on my character, it was a plot to steal Michael's inheritance. His grandfather had built Chen Investments from the ground up, turning it into an empire worth millions. The will was clear. In the event of Michael's death, the entire estate would pass to me. Unless, of course, I was proven unfaithful. You set this up, I said, glaring at Melissa. She had always resented that Michael was chosen to lead the company over her. You fabricated all of it, the photos, the video, the bank statements. Do you have proof? Melissa asked sweetly. Because we certainly do. And once the board sees it, how do you think they'll react to Michael's unfaithful widow taking control? Eleanor gathered the damning documents and tucked them back into her envelope. You have two options, Jennifer. Sign over your inheritance quietly or watch us destroy everything. Your career, your reputation, your life. She smiled coldly. Choose wisely. As they walked out, I stood motionless, staring at the mess they'd left behind. My reflection in the window looked pale and shaken, just how they wanted me to look. But beneath the shock, something else stirred. Determination. Fury. They thought they had me cornered, but they didn't realize who they were dealing with. Before I became a dentist, I put myself through college by working in its security. And if they wanted to play games with fabricated evidence, they were about to find out they weren't the only ones who knew how to manipulate digital trails. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Marcus, I need your help. How fast can you analyze some doctored photos and videos? The game had begun, and I had every intention of winning. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, driving home in the fading twilight. Scenarios ran through my mind, each worse than the last. Eleanor and Melissa had clearly orchestrated this attack over months. But they'd overlooked one crucial flaw. Digital footprints always leave a trail. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed someone waiting on my doorstep. It was David, Michael's best friend and business partner. His expression was grave. Jen, we need to talk, he said as I got out of the car. The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They've received some concerning evidence. Let me guess, I said as I unlocked my door, motioning for him to come inside. Photos, videos, and bank statements. David followed me, looking uneasy. They're claiming you had an affair, that you planned to sell your shares after inheriting. Melissa presented everything to the board earlier today. Of course she had. They weren't just pressuring me to give up the inheritance. They were dismantling every pillar of support I had. The photos are fake, David. The video was from a theater rehearsal, and the bank statements were forged, I said firmly, opening my laptop, and I can prove it. David hesitated, then sighed. Jen, I want to believe you. But what? I snapped, frustration boiling over. Melissa's evidence looks too polished, so it must be real. She's had months to fine-tune her lies, ever since Michael. My voice caught in my throat. Ever since the accident. Before David could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. I put him on speaker. Jen, you need to see this, he said. Those photos? They were generated using high-end ad technology. This wasn't your average Photoshop job. It was expensive, top-tier work. As for the video, I've isolated splicing artifacts. It's a composite, pieced together from multiple clips. Can you prove it? I asked, my heart pounding. Better, Marcus replied confidently. I traced the software purchase. Someone bought access to advanced AI imaging tools 3 months ago. The payment came from an offshore account, but guess what? It was tied to a Chen Investments credit card. Melissa's? I guessed. Exactly. She tried to cover her tracks. But she's not as tech-savvy as she thinks. Oh, and about those bank statements, they were fabricated using internal templates stolen from Chen Investments' system. The access logs show. Eleanor's credentials. I finished already knowing the answer. Bingo, Marcus confirmed. David's face drained of color. The CEO's wife using company resources to forge evidence? This could ruin them. It should, I said quietly. Now, pull up the security footage from March 15th. David did as I asked, and we watched the unedited video. It showed everything. Michael and me rehearsing lines, Melissa directing, even Eleanor standing by the door, washing. There was no room for doubt. The raw footage completely undermined their narrative. Marcus's voice came through again. One more thing. I found emails between Eleanor and Melissa dating back to shortly after Michael's accident. They were working with a private investigator, coordinating surveillance on you and planning how to present their fake evidence. David ran a hand through his hair. If you present all this tomorrow, you'll have enough to not only clear your name but also expose them. I nodded. I'll need your support. Eleanor and Melissa think they've already won. They have no idea I've uncovered their scheme. With David's help, I worked through the night alongside Marcus, compiling a detailed presentation. We gathered everything: proof of the AI purchases, email correspondence outlining their conspiracy, forensic analysis debunking the photos and videos, and most importantly, the raw security footage that exposed the truth. At dawn, David handed me one final weapon: Michael's personal journal. He'd found it in the office safe, tucked away where no one had thought to look. The last entry, written just days before his death, revealed everything. Mom and Melissa are pressuring me to change the inheritance, but I won't. They've never understood. This company isn't about money or control. It's about legacy, integrity, and trust. Jen embodies all of that. She's the only person I trust to carry on Grandpa's vision. No matter what they try, this is my decision. The company will go to her. I clutched the journal to my chest, tears blurring my vision. Even in death, Michael was still protecting me. Just then, my phone buzzed again. A message from Eleanor. The board meeting starts in 1 hour. Last chance to sign over the inheritance and walk away quietly. I smiled, a new sense of resolve hardening in my chest as I typed my response. Don't worry, Eleanor. I wouldn't miss this meeting for the world. They thought they'd orchestrated my downfall. Instead, they had paved the way for their own undoing. I arrived at Chen Investments 15 minutes early, clutching a USB drive with irrefutable evidence. Eleanor and Melissa were already in the boardroom, looking every bit the picture of polished confidence. Their smiles wavered only slightly when they saw my calm, collected demeanor. Still trying to save face, Melissa muttered as I settled into my seat. Just sign the papers and leave with some dignity. The board members filed in, their expressions serious. Eleanor stood composed and poised in a designer suit, ready to make her case. Thank you for coming. Today you must address some deeply troubling revelations about Jennifer Wu's character and activities during my son's life. She began her presentation. Photo after photo, video after video, and forged bank statements, each one more damning than the last. I sat still, watching as the fabricated evidence unfolded. Board members exchanged disapproving glances, their faces a mixture of disappointment and suspicion. And now Eleanor finished, I asked the board to vote on removing Jennifer Wu from her inherited position and transferring control to the rightful heir, my daughter, Melissa. I stood up, calm but resolute. Before we proceed with the vote, I have evidence of my own to present. I inserted my USB drive into the computer, glancing briefly at Eleanor's tightening expression. Let's begin with the photos. On screen, the technical analysis appeared, confirming the photos were AI-generated. Pay for with a Chen Investments Company card, I added, displaying the transaction records. By you, Melissa. The room filled with hushed murmurs. Melissa's face drained of color. The video? I continued. Here's the original, unedited footage from the security cameras. As you can see, we were rehearsing for Melissa's amateur theater production. And these emails between Eleanor and Melissa reveal their entire scheme to fabricate evidence and steal my inheritance. Eleanor's composure cracked. This is madness, she spat. You're fabricating evidence to destroy us. Like you fabricated everything to ruin me? I shot back, pulling Michael's journal from my bag. David found this in your office safe. Shall I read Michael's last entry about why he chose me to lead Chen Investments? Melissa lunged for the journal, but David stepped forward, blocking her. It's over, he said softly. The truth is out. The chairman of the board cleared his throat. Mrs. Chen, Miss Chen, these are grave accusations. Using company resources to create fraudulent documents, attempting to steal an inheritance through deception. These are criminal acts. You can't prove anything. Melissa screamed, though her voice wavered with panic. Actually, I said Marcus has already delivered all the evidence to the authorities. I wouldn't be surprised if they're currently seizing your computers. Eleanor slumped in her chair, the last remnants of her carefully constructed facade crumbling. We were protecting the family legacy, she whispered, her voice thick with defeat. You don't belong here. You don't deserve any of this. No, I replied firmly. You were protecting your own interests. Michael chose me because I share his values, integrity, honesty, trust. Everything you and Melissa sought to destroy. The board's vote was swift and unanimous. Not only would I retain my inherited position, But Eleanor and Melissa would now face criminal charges for fraud and corporate espionage. As security escorted them out of the room, I heard Melissa's final, venomous words. "This isn't over." But it was over. Their elaborate plot had fallen apart because they underestimated both my ability to uncover the truth and Michael's foresight. They'd never understood that a true family legacy isn't about bloodlines or power. It's about the principles that endure. 1 year later, Chen Investments was thriving under my leadership. The scandal made brief headlines, but our clients remained loyal, trusting in the values Michael's grandfather had instilled. Eleanor and Melissa accepted plea deals to avoid jail time, but they were permanently barred from the company. Every so often, I visit Michael's grave to update him on our progress. The growth of the company, the changes I'm making, the legacy I'm preserving. And when the wind rustles through the trees, I swear I can hear his voice echoing, just as it did in that final journal entry. "You're the only one I trust to carry on his legacy the right way." He was right to trust me, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it.